Okay, so hello and welcome back to another Unity tutorial. In this one, it's not going to be a coding formal tutorial like normal where it's we've got a task and we're going to go through it. I'm just going to be showing you some stuff about the animator, and it's a lot more advanced than what I've covered in my second or third ever video, which was about the animator. Because those videos are so old, if anyone wants me to actually redo animation related videos, then I'll be happy to, because I'm actually working on it a lot now in my own game, so it's fresh in my mind, and I'm learning some new things as well, which would be good to cover. In this one, I'm just gonna cover some main things that you should know when you're importing animations, specifically for humanoid characters, but I'm just gonna cover the animator basically, but for avatars specifically. So I want to start off by thanking my Patreons. Thanks to Paul Robinson, Phil Baum, and Wesley for their $5 donations on Discord. Not on Discord, sorry, on Patreon. If anyone else wants to help me, then the link is in the description below. Apart from that, let's get into it. So here's my game. Resume. Okay, so here we are. Last time any of you probably saw this, it was Capsule Boy, like one of those guys, but as my character. And now we have this. So I've got sword equipped, and I'm walking around, and I'm holding this. I know it's a bit of a weird animation. I'm still working on it, but the point is I can walk in like a ready stance, and I can run. Now the run I need to redo for the sword, but exactly, I'll get onto that in a minute and why I need to and how that works. As for the spell casting, I know that's not the focus of this video, but if I equip the Fire Blast, there's still plenty of stuff I need to redo for this, but the point is I can cast spells and run around and still do all that stuff, so it's pretty cool. And now I just need to add actual sword animations and stuff. But anyway, the actual focus of this video, what is it? Well, basically, if I minimize this, you'll see in the scene view. Let me just go this way, so I've released the cursor. So here's the character, right? He's in an idle state. Now, if I actually go onto his animator, you see we have a base layer, and the animations go like this. Now, just before I start this, if any of you recognize the kind of model-ish, I basically followed, because I'm new to animation really, I was following Sebastiaan Log. If any of you haven't heard of him, go check him out. But he does lots of, I'd say, more advanced Unity videos than other YouTubers. Like, there are other bigger Unity YouTubers who do very beginner-friendly videos, and they're very well made, but they're all just beginner content. This is a lot more, he really delves into, not necessarily held math, to do physics calculations and so on, and also there's some pretty good rigging and animation videos. He covers a lot of things actually. I'd recommend to go check him out. But I hadn't really done much animation before, in terms of humanoids anyway. I haven't really modeled a person before, so I went to his thing to kind of learn how to do it and go about it. And then he's only done a walk cycle and a run cycle, so I've had to take that, make it, and then now I have to make my own. So as you see here, we have what's called a blend tree, which you might not have used before. So what a blend tree is, if you go into it, it's got a slider, and you can keep adding more animations. So just like we have the sword idle, so if you look here, I have a sword idle, which if I press play is just a very, slow, it's basically what I'm on right now. It's just the player kind of bobbing up and down. Then we've got sword walk, so it's like this. And then I haven't actually got a sword run, I've just used my normal run, which is like this, which obviously with the sword stabs himself in the face, so I've got to fix that. But so you've got 3 separate animations. So what a blend tree does is, if I just drag this out, maybe put it down here, what you can do with a blend tree is, if I go to the scene and go to the player, then we can see the actual active one. So as you see, I'm standing still now in the idle stance, and that blend tree, the actual value is around 1. The character must be slightly moving or something, but it's around 1 or 0. If you can even see the slider, there we go. It's basically 0. It's actually a parameter on here, speed percentage. So as you see, as I run, it goes up to 0.5, and as that goes up to 0.5 up here, it actually changes this. It obviously smoothly moves to it, so it's nicer. And what it does is it basically transitions between your two. You can see these glowing. It transitions between the two animations, where it's like a merge of both. So rather than just jumping to the walk animation and then the run animation, when I hold shift, it kind of smoothly moves between them for the blend tree. And obviously you can add more to that. You just click on it and then add more, but I'm not going to. You can go really in depth for this. There's so many buttons and stuff that I never touched, don't know how to use. Well, I probably could guess or look up the documentation, but I've never used them before. Now, the reason why this is very useful is if you have a complex character controller like mine, which isn't that complex at the moment, but the point is, let's say he hasn't got his sword equipped, which obviously he has, but if I just I guess I could just, for the sake of this, I will just set the sword set active false. So let's just say he's not got a sword, even if he has. Go back to the player. Now, what I'm doing is, there might be other ways to do this. I know you can have animation layer masks, which I'll get to in a second, but it doesn't quite work for what I want. So basically, I'm going to have a different animation controller for different weapons. Then you're going to have sword, which will be like one-handed sword with shield. Then you'll also have and so on. There's going to be a bow. There's going to be different stances. Each weapon, you're going to walk, idle, and run and jump differently. So the point is, each controller is going to be for a different type of weapon. So when I'm unarmed, this is what the idle stuff looks like. So if I'm idle unarmed, I'm just like this. It's slightly moving. It's hard to see from this distance. Then if I start walking, I do the walk animation, and I start running. Okay, now that run animation I've reused for the sword because I haven't yet made a new run animation. But the point is I can stand still, walk, run. All that basically happens is when I move between the states, when I hold shift and run, it just changes this parameter, which if you didn't know in code is just like the animator, so reference the animator dot set float, and then you would pass in that's the name of the float and then the value to set it to. So obviously it smoothly goes between 0, 0.5 and 1. 1 being the run, 0.5 being the walk, and 0 being the idle. So it's a way to smoothly transition between them, which is nice. Now, obviously, yeah, nothing's perfect. The collider's a bit too big, maybe. Like, as I get close to step, I just kind of float. So, obviously, I should fix some things with that in terms of the feet. But I can do that easily. I could do it now, but I'm not going to. And jumping, I just need to make a better jump animation. But you see, the thing is, here we've got the blend tree on the player. Look at the blend tree. And the blend tree is the default. Like, that's what's happening all the time, right? We've got our idle. Inside the blend tree is what manages the walking and running as well. That's all done in the blend tree. Then when I jump, it actually leaves the blend tree, so it stops basically idle, walk, and jump. And then I've made it in the code so that basically it does jump once, it has an exit time, so that's just on there, it has exit time. So it does the jump animation, which goes whoop, and then falling happens until we are grounded again. So if I went on to player stats, and player movement stats, and I said the jump height should be actually like 10. What I can show you is how the falling animation basically loops until I hit the ground. So if I just like jump up here, let me just. This is really hard to get control because you're not meant to have a lot of control in air. Yeah, this is quite hard to do. Let's just anyway, you get the point. As I fall, you can actually just see it anyway. The falling loops, and then I land. Now the falling, yeah, the animation could be made better, so it looks really, really bad right now. But, I mean, first of all, the player's not going to be jumping 10 high anyway, so it's fine. Yeah, so now I have the jump, falling, and the blend tree for the unarmed. Now if I go to the unarmed, change it to the player sword, we actually have the exact same things, the blend tree, jump and falling, but on the blend tree I've just changed the animations. And then if I want to, for example, say when I'm jumping with a sword, it has a different jump animation, and I can just change that out, and they all work the same. Now that's one way of going about it, and that's the way I think I'm going to have to go about doing it. But another way you can do things is by using layer masks. So basically, when you make your character like this in Blender, if you follow his tutorial, I mean, I could always make one in the future, it wouldn't be as good, so I recommend going to watch his. You'll get it by the thumbnail looking similar to this character. Obviously, that's not actually what my character's going to end up looking like. It was just for the sake of following it along. Because even YouTubers who make tutorials watch tutorials too, if you didn't already know. But what you can do is, if you go to layers, we have base layer, which by default, every time you make an animation, has a base layer. With a weight of 1, you can't change it. Now, let's say I've changed this to the sword one. Obviously, I might have disabled the sword, so it looks a bit silly, but you get the point. Got my sword animation. Now, that's good and all, but what if I want to, for example, have a game with a gun or a bow, okay? And when you draw the bow specifically, you want to be able to keep walking, but you want to be able to draw the bow, which means you want your legs to keep moving how they are, but you want kind of the upper part of your body to take over as such. You want it to be able to do the bow animation, leaving your legs moving. Well, the way to do that is actually quite simple. So if you go back to somewhere in your project where your player stuff is, I've got it all in this folder. If you create and then go down to avatar mask, so avatar mask, let's say we just call it player upper body, okay? Player upper body. And all you have to do is click on the humanoid thing, assuming... So this is a simple way to do it, assuming that your character is humanoid. Now, Sebastiaan covers this in his video. Basically, when you're rigging the character and setting up the bone structure, if you do it in a certain way, which I assume is explained in the Unity documentation, your Unity can actually interpret it as a humanoid avatar like this, which saves so much time in places. But obviously, a lot of games don't just have all humanoids. So... if you want to have like odd characters, you can actually just set this manually through the transform by selecting the avatar and then tweaking each part separately. But by default, you can just say, all right, we want the upper body, so let's disable leg, and the inverse kinematics, and the... I don't actually know what the bottom bit is, maybe it's just feet. It's hard to tell there. But that mask is done. Now, if I go to the base layer and I say, I want to add a new layer, and this layer is just called sword, okay? Now this might handle something to do with the sword, okay? So let's say we have an animation on all of the time. The one where we're doing the walking with the sword, let's say we have that on all the time. Obviously we're not going to, but if I create a state, and I say this state is the sword walking, which is a loop, so that's just going to keep going. When I unpause the game, that's just going to go, okay? Now, if you look here, we're not actually doing the sword walk, we're just kind of doing the sword idle, aren't we? Well, the thing is, when we do sword walk, it's like this. What if you want a bit of both? Now, this is a bad example. I don't actually have, like, the bow set up, or you could do it with a gun, for example. Anything that's, like, split parts of your body where only one bit does something. So what you can do is, I can say sword, avatar mask, upper body. And what that means is it's gonna, it's ignoring the lower body, so the lower body can still keep happening. But if I put this to 100, what it means is now, even when I'm not moving, it's just playing this animation over it. I've set the weight to 1. So I can move... Then my legs move completely how they would just from the normal running and walking. So, run, walk, whatever. They move just like normal. But because I've put the upper body parts on the avatar mask, and I've put it into its own layer with this looping animation, it's actually doing that. Now, the best thing about this is it's actually tweakable. So if I just click off it, there we go. So I can now tweak this weight between 0 and 1. So 0 would mean this doesn't have any effect. 1 means it completely overrides it. If I put it to like a smaller value, like 0.5, it means that it's kind of trying to go halfway between the upper body doing what it is in the base layer and the upper body doing what it's doing in the sword layer. So it's all about you tweaking to get what you want. But the point is, this is really good if you are, for example, sheathing and unsheathing a weapon. That's a good example. Okay, that's a bad example, never mind. It's good in some cases, alright, so if it's a sword, you want to actually have an unsheathing animation, obviously, so you can get everything right. But if it's like, for example, you're holding a gun when you're aiming down it, and then you're holding a gun when you're running, so it's by your side, you would have the gun, or not the gun, but you'd have the arms that control the gun, that hold it, on its own layer. So what you could do is, let's say in your base layer, the gun is being held by your side, but in the gun layer, you're holding it up, aiming, you would just have to tweak this up and down, and it would actually just bring the gun up to your face or whatever. Now, there's override and there is additive. Now, if you don't know what additive means anyway, instead of just replacing the values, it would actually, add to them. So it would get like weird looking stuff. Looks pretty stupid if I remember correctly. I don't know. It's okay, but it doesn't look that great. Yeah. I don't think it's that noticeable like this, but I would say just stick to override unless you know what you're doing with the additive. And also IK pass. I mean, inverse kinematics. This video isn't meant to be necessarily beginner friendly. It's just meant to be more intermediate. Unless you're a beginner that's looking into animation, then I guess this is quite relevant. But inverse kinematics is basically where it's where one thing moves another dependent on it's almost like a joint system. So by default, you've got it's not inverse kinematics, it's just like rigid kinematics. I don't know what the actual name for it is, but basically it's like saying if you had let's go to Blender quickly. So in Blender, here we go, I'm working on I was just doing the walking animation with the sword. The inverse kinematic system, if I, for example, I'm not going to actually save the keyframe, I don't want to ruin my animation. So if I go to here, Now, this obviously is the leg, foot, toes. This here is the actual inverse kinematic joint for the foot. Well, for the leg, actually. Kinda. So, well, it's for this joint, obviously, but everything else is like a hinge. Well, it's a hinge for those points. So if I move this, it's not actually going to deform the mesh. But what it does is, it moves the other bones around it. Now, it's like an actual joint in the sense of, you know, you can't stretch it out longer than it actually is, but if you push it upwards, it starts to bend like a knee joint. And you can add a max and a min. Obviously, if you try and push it further than it should go, then it's going to look stupid. But the point is, it makes animation really simple because it moves like a realistic human leg, assuming that you've modeled the leg right and stuff. Now, if I press Alt-A, you can see the animation. And I can go through my different animations. So there's the run one. Now it's going to look a bit stupid because I would need to set that up to be end frame 13 and go. Anyway, I could even go on to 3D full view to see it like this. But you get the point. It's all pretty cool stuff. And obviously this just gets converted. Unity picks this up in their own animator. But the difference is when you see it in Unity's animator, it's all read-only. You can't actually edit any of it, though you can... I tried to delete that. I know you can't. You can still preview it all, though. Looks a bit weird because it's paused and all. But yeah, you can actually look through the animations on here. So like sword walk. Now keep in mind I've got the layer mask on, so it's a bit weird. It's different. So obviously I don't want this layer mask. That was just an example. Now what I just need to do is I need to add sword attacking. So just like here, you can go to sword attack, but I'm gonna make it. I might make it so you can go from jump to attack. We'll see. Maybe jump attack has different attacks and so on. Also, the attack state might be different that it goes to depending on combos and stuff. You know, it's a complex system. But the point is, I'm just gonna keep making animations, and then hopefully soon enough, before I make this game go into, I guess what I'm calling it, beta or alpha, whatever. When it goes out for testing in the Christmas holidays in December, late December, it's early-ish December now. I will hopefully have it so that the sword set up at least the sword in a basic state where you can actually swing and damage enemies. Maybe add like a tiny bit of camera shake when you hit or when you get hit. I could even make the enemies just like duplicates of the player that do like the same thing for now. Obviously the player can also do other things, but yeah. It's going well. Obviously, this is like a kind of progress update as well as a tutorial. It's not even a tutorial. It's just showing stuff off, like how to do things and what does what. If you've never touched the animator before, then obviously I don't know why you're still watching unless you're just interested, to be honest. What have I deleted from the player here? Oh, that was just a stupid test script for the sword yesterday. But yeah, the main thing to take away from this is blend tree to go smoothly between idle, walk, run, or whatever other things you have. Layers, so base layer, here we go, is always by default there, you know, just ignore it. But if you want to have certain parts of your body move independently of others or override animations, you can add that and then tweak the weight to see, you know, you can set all these parameters from script anyway, so there's, you know, and then you got your actual parameter. So the trigger for jump will obviously go to jump, then jump will go to falling when jump is finished, and then falling will keep looping until is grounded is true. And then sword attack is when I added. That's now gone, basically. I don't need it anymore. But yeah, the only problem is if I now go between... Well, to be honest, player unarmed shouldn't have the sword attack. And sword should, but I'm going to do the attack system differently. I might use an integer system, so it picks a random number, and I'll have each animation on a different number, so that if it calls a particular number, then it'll go to a different attack animation, so I can have varied attacking patterns and strings and stuff. So I think it'd be pretty cool. But yeah, I hope you took something away from this video. I hope you learned something about this and avatar masks, how to use it. I don't need one right now, so I might as well just delete that. But you get the point. Also, yeah, when you import your model then, Sebastiaan covers this, but you want to obviously import your animations. On the rig, make sure it's selected to humanoid, assuming that it is a humanoid, and you've set it up like that. Then you press configure, and you can actually go and see... if you give it a second, maybe you have to be out of play mode. Go to configure. You can actually view it in here, and you can see your character. You can reset the pose, but it's actually my pose is slightly off from a T-pose. You can just get it to force T-pose. you can get it to make sure all your bones are correct. Now I don't actually have shoulder joints on here. I have the neck and the torso and the legs, but I don't have the shoulder. You don't need them. There's only certain ones that you do need. Some of them are optionals. Like as you see on here, actually, hips, spine are necessary. Chest and upper chest is optional. So it's all up to you, depending on how. The more you add, obviously, the longer animation's going to take you, and the more varied you can get it, which is obviously good. But yeah, it's going to take you longer. Pose, yeah, whatever. And then once you're done, you just press apply and done. But yeah, I hope you learned something from this. I'm going to continue with the kind of normal tutorials from tomorrow onwards. Oh, Unity's crashed. That's a good timing, isn't it? Well, this is just when I was about to end the video. So yeah, if you've learned something new about the Animator, then obviously feel free to leave a like and subscribe. If you want to see more videos, leave suggestions in the comments below. I want to have people commenting with what they want to see me do. But apart from that, thanks for watching and goodbye.